My friends, if you look long enough into the eyes of a narcissist, you are not merely seeing another person, you are gazing into a mirror crafted by your own unconscious. The tragedy and the revelation are the same. What you perceive in them is not only their illusion, but also yours. The narcissist wears a mask, yes, but the substance of that mask is woven from the unacknowledged parts of your own psyche, the fragments you have refused to love, the wounds you have disowned, the shadows you have left behind in the corners of your inner house. And so, when you encounter such a person, you are not only meeting their pathology, you are meeting your own reflection through the veil of their performance. You see, in every soul, there exists a yearning for recognition. The infant cries for the mother's gaze, the adult seeks validation from the world, the spirit longs to be seen by the divine. The narcissist takes this primordial hunger and bends it into a theater. They have built an altar to the false self, an idol that must be worshipped, adored, and maintained at all costs. But beneath their polished surface lies an abyss, the hollow echo of a child who was once unseen. They are terrified not of rejection, but of invisibility. The mask they wear is not vanity. It is armor against the unbearable truth that behind it there may be no face at all. Yet I must tell you something that may disturb you. The narcissist's hunger for validation is a distorted version of your own. When you feel drawn to them, when you are fascinated or outraged or magnetized by their presence, you are not reacting to their charm or cruelty alone. You are responding to something within you that recognizes itself. The mirror of the narcissist does not show you who they are. It shows you who you have not yet dared to confront. They become the archetype of your denied self, the glamour of your own forgotten shadow. You call them manipulators, deceivers, or emotional vampires. And perhaps you are right, but understand this: what they steal from you is not your energy, but your illusion of separateness. They force you into the confrontation. You have avoided the recognition that your light and their darkness are born of the same cosmic field. You project your hidden grandiosity onto them and then hate them for embodying it. You admire their confidence, their self-assurance, their intoxicating sense of superiority. And then you despise them because they dare to display openly what you repress within yourself. The narcissist becomes both your ideal and your punishment. That is the cruel elegance of the psyche's design in every myth. There is a warning about mirrors. Narcissus himself did not fall in love with his own face. He fell in love with the reflection of a soul he could not see. When he gazed into the water, he mistook the image for the essence, the projection for the truth. That is the very pattern of the narcissistic wound, and it repeats endlessly across generations. But what most people overlook is that Narcissus represents not only the narcissist, but also the one who is ensnared by him. The victim and the perpetrator share the same curse. Both are trapped in a hall of mirrors, each reflecting the other's unconscious longing. You may wonder, how does one escape this labyrinth of reflection? It is not through anger, nor through withdrawal alone, but through consciousness, you must reclaim the energy you have poured into the image. You must see that what fascinates you is a symbol, a dream figure clothed in human flesh. The narcissist plays a role in your psychological drama. They are the emissary of your shadow. To see them clearly is to begin to see yourself clearly. Only when you can say, this quality exists in me too, does the spell begin to break. The narcissist, in their way, is an alchemist, but an unwise one. They transmute their pain into gold-plated persona, mistaking the shine for substance. But they remind us of the eternal tension between the true self and the false self, between being and appearing. The false self seeks attention, the true self seeks integration. The false self thrives on mirrors, the true self dissolves them. The more you identify with image, the farther you drift from essence. The narcissist has simply taken this human tendency to its extreme. Until the mask devours the man beneath it, do not think, however, that you are immune. Each of us constructs masks. The persona is a necessary fiction. It is the bridge between our inner world and the demands of society. But the danger arises when we begin to worship the mask, when we forget that it is only a surface. Then, like the narcissist, we become entranced by our own reflection and lose contact with the depths beneath. This, I believe, is one of the great epidemics of the modern world. Not narcissism in the clinical sense, but the collective worship of images, the endless craving for external validation. We are all living in a mirror age, surrounded by reflections that do not feed the soul. The narcissist becomes the high priest of this new religion. They understand instinctively how to manipulate the currency of attention. They feed on admiration as others feed on bread. And yet, behind their apparent power lies profound fragility. They are like children guarding a cracked mirror, terrified that if anyone looks too closely, the illusion will shatter. Beneath the mask of omnipotence lies an ocean of shame, not ordinary shame, but existential shame, the fear that they are unworthy of love simply for being. That is why they must constantly perform, seduce, and dominate. To stop is to risk annihilation. If you have ever loved such a person, you know the rhythm of their dance, the idealization and the devaluation, the intoxicating beginning and the cruel withdrawal. At first, they seem to see you more vividly than anyone ever has. Their attention feels like sunlight after years of winter, but soon that light becomes too bright, too demanding. The gaze that once adored you begins to dissect you. You become an object in their inner drama, a reflection they must control. And when you fail to mirror them perfectly, they withdraw their love, leaving you to question your own worth. In truth, they have not betrayed you. They have revealed the condition of your own dependency. They have shown you the part of yourself that needs to be seen, the inner child still begging for approval. Thus, my warning is not against the narcissist alone, but against the part of you that keeps seeking them. For the psyche attracts not what it desires, but what it needs for its own realization. If you repeatedly find yourself entangled with narcissists, you must ask, what in me calls them forth? What hidden wound do they mirror? Perhaps you have not yet learned to see yourself without another's gaze. Perhaps you still fear your own darkness, and thus gravitate toward those who wear it openly. The narcissist, in this sense, is both your teacher and your test. The path of individuation requires that you withdraw projections from the outer world and integrate them into your inner one. Every person who fascinates or wounds you carries a message from your unconscious. The narcissist's mask reflects your relationship with your own image, your own fear of being unseen, unloved, or unworthy. The moment you recognize this, the dynamic begins to shift. You no longer feed the illusion, you begin to reclaim your soul. This is not easy work. It requires that you face the shadow without judgment, that you embrace the parts of yourself you have exiled, but in doing so, you become less vulnerable to the seductions of the false self, both theirs and your own. Remember this, the narcissist's tragedy is that they cannot bear to be ordinary, but the self, the true self, is not extraordinary. It is eternal. It does not need to be admired because it simply is. To live from that center is to become free from the tyranny of mirrors. Then you no longer crave validation nor fear invisibility, for you rest in the quiet knowing of your own being. That is the liberation toward which all this suffering points. The warning, then, is not merely a caution against those who manipulate your heart. It is an invitation to awaken. The mask of the narcissist is your mirror, and it reflects the divine paradox within you, that your light is born of your darkness, and your wholeness includes what you fear most to see. When I speak of the narcissist as your mirror, I do not mean this in the moral sense, as though you are guilty for their cruelty or responsible for their vanity. I speak in the language of symbols. In the psyche, all encounters are mirrors, and every relationship is an image projected onto the screen of reality. The unconscious communicates not in words but in reflections, in dreams, in synchronicities, in people who appear at the exact moment you are ready to confront a hidden truth. The narcissist enters your life as a living dream figure carrying the face of your forgotten wound. They do not come to destroy you, they come to reveal you, but to the ego, revelation always feels like destruction. You must understand that the narcissist's entire being revolves around the archetype of the false king, the usurper, who seizes the throne of the soul and rules through illusion. This archetype is ancient. It appears in myths as the tyrant who claims divinity, but is hollow within, as the shining god whose temple is empty. The narcissist carries that archetype not as a choice, but as a possession. The false king has enthroned himself within their psyche, whispering promises of admiration, commanding endless applause, and threatening annihilation if the mask should ever slip. Behind every narcissist is the ghost of a terrified child, kneeling before a mirror that will not speak. And yet, there is a strange mercy hidden within their tragedy. They remind us of the danger that lies within each of us, the temptation to identify with the mask, to forget the soul behind it. The narcissist is humanity exaggerated, humanity reflected through a cracked lens. When we judge them too quickly, we deny our own reflection in their eyes. But when we see them as carriers of an archetypal illness, we begin to see our own sickness mirrored back. The culture that creates them is itself addicted to admiration, obsessed with appearance, desperate for the illusion of superiority. We have built temples to persona and banished the sacred dark. The narcissist simply dances at the altar of a god we all secretly worship, the god of image. Look around you. What do you see in this modern world? Screens that reflect faces instead of souls. Endless performances masquerading as authenticity. The rise of self-worship disguised as self-expression. The collective unconscious is saturated with the energy of the false king. We call it success, influence, fame. But beneath the glittering mask, humanity trembles. The collective ego fears invisibility. It must constantly announce its existence to drown the silence of meaninglessness. The narcissist is not the exception. They are the mirror in which civilization sees its own face. But let us turn inward. When you are drawn into the orbit of such a person, the attraction is not random. Something within you responds to their radiance because they embody an archetype that lives in you as well. Perhaps you have repressed your own desire for greatness, your own longing to be admired. Perhaps you have denied your need to be seen, and thus it returns to you wearing the face of the narcissist. They act out what you have hidden. They live the fantasy you have disowned. And then, when their mask turns cruel, when their love becomes manipulation, you are forced to confront your own split, the part of you that longs for recognition and the part that despises that longing. The narcissist is a teacher, but their lessons are written in pain. They teach through contrast, through the ache of betrayal, the confusion of gaslighting, the emptiness of being unseen by the one who claims to love you. Yet, in that very darkness, the self begins its work. For individuation often begins not with insight, but with heartbreak. The shattering of illusion is the birth of consciousness. The narcissist shatters you so that you may see what within you depended on illusion to survive. They are the black sun that burns away the false light. In alchemy, the first stage of transformation is called nigredo, the blackening, the descent into chaos. It is the point at which all structure dissolves, all certainty collapses. That is the psychological experience of being entangled with a narcissist. Your sense of self disintegrates, your reality becomes unstable, and you begin to doubt your own perceptions. This is not merely emotional suffering, it is the symbolic death of the ego, and as terrible as it feels, it is also sacred. For only through such dissolution can the deeper self emerge. The narcissist, without knowing it, serves as your dark initiator, but you must not remain in their orbit Once you have learned the lesson, the alchemist cannot linger in the furnace forever. To stay too long is to burn away your essence. The task is to extract meaning from the encounter, to retrieve the gold of awareness from the ashes of illusion. To do this, you must face the part of you that colluded with their mask, the part that needed to believe in their perfection, the part that traded truth for attention, until you see that within yourself you will remain bound to the mirror. The narcissist is not just an individual. They are a symbol of your unconscious pact with falsity. It is painful to admit, but many who fall under the spell of narcissists carry within them a deep spiritual hunger, the hunger to be seen by God, but mistaken for the hunger to be adored by man. The narcissist promises to fill that void with their attention, their charm, their seeming omnipotence. But what they actually offer is a counterfeit version of divine recognition. They see you only through the lens of utility, as a reflection of their own grandiosity. And yet, that false light still serves a hidden purpose. It reminds you of what genuine illumination would feel like. It awakens in you the memory of being known by the self, by the divine center of your own being. Thus, my warning is this: do not curse the narcissist, but do not follow them either. They are a mirror, not a guide. Their path leads only deeper into illusion. Your task is to take back the projection, to reclaim the light you have given away. You do this not through confrontation, but through contemplation. Withdraw your gaze from their performance and turn it inward. Ask yourself, what part of me believed that love must be earned through perfection? What part of me fears being ordinary, unseen, or unremarkable? Those are the true sources of your suffering. When you see them clearly, the mask loses its power. In dreams, the narcissist often appears as a radiant figure, a celebrity, a king, a lover made of gold. But if you approach them, their face begins to dissolve, and beneath it you may glimpse a crying child or a withered corpse. That image contains the whole psychology of narcissism. The outer brilliance hides an inner void, and the dreamer you must choose whether to cling to the illusion or embrace the truth. If you reach out to touch the golden mask, it will disintegrate in your hands. If you kneel to hold the weeping child beneath it, you will begin to heal not only them, but yourself. This is a great paradox. To overcome narcissism, one must love the very part of oneself that created it. The ego cannot be conquered by hatred. It must be understood. The narcissist is the ego made flesh, the endless striving to be special, to be adored, to escape the ordinariness of human limitation. But beneath that striving lies the same wound in all of us, the feeling of separation from the divine source. When the soul forgets its origin, it seeks substitute gods, mirrors, followers, admiration, fame. It builds temples to its own reflection. That is the original sin of consciousness. not pride, but forgetfulness. When you remember that you are not the mask, when you rediscover the self beneath the persona, you break the spell. You no longer crave the reflection, because you have found the light within. Then even the narcissist's power fades. Their manipulation can no longer bind you, for there is nothing left in you that needs their gaze. You may see them with compassion as a soul caught in its own dream, but you will not mistake that dream for reality. You will have learned the secret alchemy to turn reflection into realization. And so, I say to you, beware not only of the narcissist's mask, but of your own. The world will always offer you mirrors, lovers, enemies, screens, audiences. Each one will tempt you to define yourself by what you see reflected. But the self is not found in mirrors. It is found in silence, in solitude, in the dark space where no reflection exists. There, in that emptiness, the divine image is born not as something to be admired, but as something to be lived. That is the liberation beyond narcissism. To be real in a world of reflections. When the mirror shatters, what remains is not the end, it is the beginning of true sight. You stand before the fragments of the reflection you once worshipped, and for the first time you begin to see the outlines of your authentic being. The narcissist, by breaking you, forces the false self to die. Yet in that death, something eternal stirs. You begin to perceive the vast architecture of your psyche, the silent cathedral that was always there behind the illusions of admiration and rejection. The destruction of the image makes space for the birth of essence. I have often said that what we do not make conscious will rule us as fate. The narcissist is one such fate, a living embodiment of your unconscious, dramatized in human form, until you integrate the qualities you have projected upon them, their confidence, their charm, their cruelty, their hunger. You will meet them again and again, each time wearing a different face. The unconscious repeats its lessons until consciousness emerges. What you refuse to face inwardly will find a way to meet you outwardly, even if it must wound you to be seen. This is the meaning of shadow possession. When an archetype is repressed, it does not disappear. It descends into the underworld of the psyche, where it grows powerful and autonomous. It begins to act through you or through others around you. The narcissist, therefore, is often the vessel of your unintegrated shadow, your denied ambition, your forbidden prill, your unacknowledged will to power. You hate them because they act out what you secretly desire. You fear them because they mirror the parts of yourself that you have condemned. In this way, the encounter becomes sacred, for it reveals to you the geography of your own disowned soul. To reclaim those lost parts is an act of courage. It is easy to condemn the narcissist as evil, to call them toxic and flee their presence. But if you do so without understanding, you will carry their reflection within you still. You will flee one mirror only to find another. The true task is inner integration. You must Draw the projection back to its source. Ask yourself, where in me does this arrogance live? Where in me hides this hunger for approval? Where in me sleeps this terror of being unseen? When you can answer those questions without shame, you have already begun the work of liberation. There is a dream that often arises in those who have suffered under the spell of narcissists. They dream they are standing in front of a vast mirror, but the reflection does not match their movements. The image smiles when they do not, speaks when they are silent. It seems alive, independent. This dream reveals the psychic split between the persona and the self, the false image that has taken on a life of its own. The narcissist does not merely mirror you. They awaken the awareness of your own dividedness. And so, when the dreamer finally turns away from the mirror, refusing to be ruled by the image, the reflection fades into darkness. Out of that darkness, a light begins to form, not a reflection, but a radiance arising from within. That light is the self reclaiming its throne. The ancient alchemists understood this process as the journey from nigredo, blackness, through albedo, whitening, and rubedo, reddening, the stages of purification through suffering, illumination through insight, and embodiment through transformation. The narcissistic encounter corresponds to the nigredo stage, the burning, the chaos, the decomposition of the false self. When consciousness begins to dawn, you enter albedo, the whitening, the dawning of understanding. You begin to separate illusion from truth, projection from reality. Finally, through love, not sentimental love, but divine compassion, you reach rubedo, the reddening, the full union of opposites within the soul. This is the state where shadow and light are reconciled, and you are no longer fragmented between image and essence. It is not a pleasant journey, but it is holy. The soul cannot be saved without descending into its own underworld. The narcissist, though they know it not, becomes your Virgil, guiding you through the inferno of mirrors. They lead you to the threshold of self-realization by embodying everything you must transcend. You descend into despair, into confusion, into loneliness, until at last you discover that the light you sought from them has always been your own. When you emerge, you do so not as the same person who entered. You are reborn as one who no longer seeks reflection, for you have become transparent to the divine. Let me tell you a story, a myth from the collective, unconscious. Once there was a man who sought the most beautiful mirror in the world. He traveled across lands, through deserts and oceans, until at last he found a mirror so radiant that it seemed to contain the stars. When he looked into it, he saw a God staring back, powerful, Majestatis, eternal. He fell to his knees in awe, but when he reached out to touch it, the mirror cracked and the image vanished. He screamed in despair until a voice rose from within him. I was never in the mirror, I was in you. That, my friends, is the voice of the self. This story repeats in every human life. We all seek the mirror that will prove our worth, that will show us our divinity. Sometimes that mirror takes the form of a lover, sometimes a teacher, sometimes the admiration of the crowd, but every mirror must eventually break, for no external image can contain the infinite. The narcissist is merely the most intense version of this universal pattern they offer you, the illusion of being seen perfectly, only to shatter that illusion and force you back into yourself. If you understand this, you can transform pain into initiation. The world today is in crisis precisely because it has forgotten this truth. It worships the mirror and denies the soul. The collective psyche has become entranced by its own reflection in technology, in fame, in endless self-display. The modern human does not know who they are without an audience, and so we live in an age of collective narcissism, where the persona has devoured the self. My warning, then, is not only personal, but civilizational. If we continue to worship the mask, we will lose our capacity for depth. If we mistake reflection for reality, we will become hollow as the very archetype that possesses us. What is the antidote? It is not rejection of image, but the remembrance of essence. The persona is not evil. It is the necessary clothing of the soul. But we must not mistake the garment for the wearer. Individuation means learning to move between inner and outer with consciousness, to know when you are wearing the mask and when you are being the self. When you can use the mask without believing in it, you are free. The narcissist cannot do this. They are enslaved by their reflection, but you, if you awaken, can hold both truth and image in balance. When you meet a narcissist again, and you will, for the archetype moves through many forms, greet them with awareness, see their performance, but do not join it. Feel the pull of their charisma, but anchor yourself in stillness. Their words will attempt to seduce your inner child, to awaken your need to be seen. Do not repress that need. Embrace it consciously. Tell the child within, I see you, I love you. You do not need their gaze. And you will feel a strange power rise in you, the power of self-recognition. That is the moment when the mirror breaks and becomes a window. You begin to see through them into the deeper fabric of reality where all souls are connected, where no reflection is needed because all are known. And so the warning I give you is not one of fear, but of remembrance. Every narcissist you meet, every false king who crosses your path, carries a hidden gift, the opportunity to reclaim the sovereignty of your own soul. They are the distorted reflection of the divine calling you home. Do not linger in their illusion, but do not curse them either. Bless them as the messengers of your awakening. For in the end, every mask is your mirror, and every mirror, once shattered, reveals the face of God. My friends, we have traveled far together into the strange kingdom of mirrors. And now we stand at the threshold of its deepest mystery. The question that lingers, and it always does, at the end of every descent is this: what becomes of love after the illusion dies? What remains when the mask falls, when the mirror cracks, when admiration dissolves into ash? Does the soul still know how to love? Or does it recoil into fear, determined never again to trust what shines? The answer, I tell you, is both the wound and the cure. For love, stripped of illusion, becomes not admiration, not possession, not reflection, but seeing. To truly see another without the veil of projection is the highest form of love. It is divine love, and that is what the narcissist, in their own tragic way, prepares you for. Their blindness forces you to awaken your inner sight. Their incapacity for empathy drives you to discover empathy's true root, not in pity, but in awareness. The narcissist teaches you to differentiate between love that flatters the ego and love that feeds the soul. Once you have known the counterfeit, you will never again mistake it for gold. You will learn to love from wholeness. Note hunger. Do not think this lesson is cruel. It is sacred initiation. The psyche speaks through opposites. The soul evolves through contrast. In meeting the one who cannot see you, you are driven to see yourself. In loving one who cannot love you, you are taught the secret of divine self-love, not vanity, not arrogance, but reverent acceptance of your being as it is. This is what I call individuation, the process by which the divine image within you becomes conscious. It is not self-improvement, nor the pursuit of perfection, but reconciliation with your totality. You become one with your own shadow, and thus cease projecting it outward. When that happens, no narcissist can hold you captive, for you no longer seek your reflection in others. The danger of the narcissistic age is that it confuses visibility with existence. People believe that to be unseen is to be unreal, but visibility is the concern of the ego. Being is the domain of the soul. The more you chase the gaze of others, the more you abandon your own. The world today is filled with those who are endlessly seen but never known. They mistake exposure for intimacy, applause for connection, performance for purpose. The collective psyche is addicted to mirrors, glowing digital mirrors that promise validation yet deliver emptiness. Humanity has become a global Narcissus, kneeling before the luminous pool of its own technology, hypnotized by its reflection. My warning, then, is not merely psychological, it is prophetic. If consciousness does not awaken, civilization itself may drown in its reflection. The soul cannot survive on mirrors. The human spirit requires depth, silence, the dark soil of solitude in which meaning can take root. Without this, we become hollow, echoing images of ourselves. The narcissist within the collective will grow stronger, feeding on attention until all substance is devoured. Only the awakening of the individual can reverse this, the return of each soul to its own inner source of light. You may ask, how does one live in such a world without being consumed by it? The answer is simple, though not easy. Live from the center. Withdraw your identity from the reflection and anchor it in being. Do not define yourself by how you appear, by how others respond, by the approval or rejection of the crowd. The self does not seek to be admired, it seeks to be realized. When you act from that center, you radiate authenticity, and authenticity, paradoxically, is the one thing the narcissist cannot imitate. It is the unmirrored light. It shines not to be seen, but simply because it is. Let me speak now of shadow integration, for it is the key to this freedom. The narcissist's mask exists because they cannot bear their own shadow. They project it outward, their weakness, their shame, their vulnerability, and thus they must constantly control others to avoid seeing themselves. But you, if you wish to be free, must do the opposite. You must turn toward your shadow and say, I will not exile you. Every quality you despise in them exists somewhere in you. This is not accusation, it is liberation. When you can embrace your own selfishness, your vanity, your hunger for attention, they lose power over you. You no longer need another to act them out. You integrate them into consciousness and transmute them into creativity, confidence, and compassion. This is the alchemy of the soul, transforming what is base into what is divine. The narcissist externalizes this process. They coat the ego in gold while leaving the soul untouched. You must reverse it. You must strip the gold from the mask and melt it into the heart. Then the divine image, which they imitate, becomes real in you. You become radiant not because you are admired, but because you have united the opposites within. This is what the ancients meant when they spoke of the philosopher's stone, the consciousness that reconciles all dualities. And yet, you must not hate the narcissist for their failure to achieve this union. Their tragedy is cosmic. They are the living symbol of humanity's collective struggle between image and essence. They carry, often unknowingly, the unbearable weight of our cultural sickness. Their pain is ancient, the pain of a soul that has mistaken reflection for reality since the dawn of self-awareness. To hate them is to hate your own history. To understand them is to glimpse the universal drama of creation itself, the fall of consciousness from unity into separation, and the long, painful journey home. There is a story I once heard in a dream. A man was walking through a hall of mirrors. Each reflection showed him a different face, some beautiful, some monstrous. He ran from one to the next, searching for the true one. At last, exhausted, he sat down in the center of the hall. In that stillness, the mirrors began to fade. The faces disappeared, and in the empty air, he felt a presence vast, cared, immeasurable. A voice whispered, I was never in the mirrors. I am the space in which they stand. That is the voice of the self, the eternal, unreflected being that underlies all appearances. This, I believe, is the final stage of individuation, the realization that the self does not need to be mirrored at all. You are not the image, nor the reflection, nor even the one who observes them. You are the light that makes seeing possible. When this becomes your lived experience, the entire drama of narcissism dissolves. You can move through the world of mirrors without losing yourself in them. You can love those still trapped in illusion without being trapped yourself. You can see the narcissist and no longer need to fix them, hate them, or be seen by them. You recognize them as another expression of the divine, lost in its own dream. And so, my final warning is also a blessing. Beware the mirror that flatters, but cherish the one that reveals. Beware the gaze that adores without understanding, but trust the gaze that sees your darkness and does not turn away. Beware the temptation to play the role of the savior, for it is another mask in disguise. And above all, beware the inner whisper that says, "You are special," for it is the most seductive voice of all, the voice of the false king. The echo of Narcissus still kneeling by the water. You are not special. You are sacred. There is a difference. Specialness divides. Sacredness unites. The first seeks to be above. The second seeks to be whole. The soul's task, then, is not to escape the mirror, but to see through it, to recognize that every face, every reflection, every relationship is but a facet of the same divine totality. The narcissist's mask is your mirror because it reveals your unfinished work. When you have embraced all, that you are the light and the shadow, the sinner and the saint, their mask will fall away, for it has no purpose left to serve. The mirror will dissolve into transparency, and you will find yourself standing in the luminous emptiness of truth. There, in that silence, you will understand what I have been trying to tell you, that every encounter, even the most painful, is the self-meeting itself. The narcissist's tragedy, your suffering, your awakening, they are all movements of one vast psyche, one eternal consciousness discovering itself through contrast. There is no enemy, only mirrors. There is no illusion, only the play of light upon the surface of being. And when you know this, truly know it, the game ends. You no longer seek to be seen, for you have become the seer. You no longer crave reflection, for you have become light. You no longer fear the mask, for you know that behind every mask, God is looking back. And that, my friends, is my final warning and my final gift. Beware the mirrors, but bless them, for through them you will find the face that was never reflected, the love that was never lost, and the self that has always been your home,